Hey everybody, this is Thomas Androvic, your voice for the PPC in Whitby, Friday, February 25th. Today, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, take my eyes off a little bit off of Ottawa, and I'm going to concentrate more on what everybody's watching at the moment. That's the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But I'm going to look at it under a different light, going to put it under the microscope, and going to try to examine it in a different way. You see, we come from Eastern Europe, Hungary, and that region. So we see things differently. We examine things differently. We think differently. And it's going to put a perspective on it that you're not going to see or hear on mainstream media. So bear with me. Don't think I'm completely crazy. And I just want you to keep an open mind. So when I talk about it, you start thinking a little bit differently. Because what do we see right now? The MSM and all the Western leaders are talking the same way, that we have a dictator and authoritarian. We have a Stalin reincarnated within Vladimir Putin, leader of Russia. Everybody is saying the same thing, that he is the cause of everything. He's crazy, insane, and he had no right to go and invade and put a siege on the Ukraine and invade it. Don't get me wrong, war is never the answer. Nobody comes out well at the end of a war or during a war. War hurts everybody. Let that be physically, let that be economically. War is terrible. Diplomacy is always the answer. We should never be looking to war. War is the final and last means to be able to come to an agreement. It's the final resort. However, let's take a look at this Russia-Ukraine conflict, because there are a number of points that I want to show you, a number of points I want to quickly talk about, so you get an idea of where I'm coming from, where many of us see this whole conflict arising from, and why perhaps the West looks at it on a completely different lens. All right? Point number one, let's look at NATO. We know that since the fall and the dismemberment of the USSR, the Soviet Union, Russia has been asking NATO to stay away from its borders, to keep a distance from the borders. They asked NATO to not put military bases in the former Eastern European country, Eastern European bloc. If you look at it, take a look at the map of Eastern Europe, so the Baltic countries from the north all the way down through Poland, former Czechoslovakia, so Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, etc., all along the borders of the Ukraine and Russia, you're going to see numerous U.S. bases, NATO bases, and forces all set up along the Russian border. We also know that over the last number of years, NATO has been courting Ukraine. Ukraine wants in, NATO wants Ukraine in. Russia has been saying, back off. We don't want NATO in our backyard. Never mind backyard, they're right on our border. They're right in front of our door, at our front door. They're ringing the bell. We're not going to let them in. Back off. They feel that this is a threat. They feel that this is aggression from NATO's part and the USA's part. Imagine, having the situation reversed. Having, let's say, China right along the US-Canada border. Would we not say back off? Would we feel that is aggression? Would we not feel threatened? Of course we would. Back off. Russia is enforcing and asserting its will and its thoughts and its fears as well through this invasion of Ukraine. Understand this. Point number one. So, NATO. Point number two. We're getting more into the economics. Here we have oil and gas pipelines. All oil and gas goes through the Ukraine to Western Europe. Western Europe does not have its own gas and oil resources. It just doesn't. It gets all of its gas and oil from Russia. one of the reasons why they built the Nord Stream 2 pipeline under the, or they were building it at least, they wanted to have it built under the Northern Sea so that they could get around the Ukraine and have gas and oil come from Russia, directly from Russia. You don't have to go through the Ukraine. There are always issues with the Ukraine. Ukraine would close the taps off, not once, not twice, but many times. Steal oil and steal gas off of these pipelines, cause major problems. But also we have the USA. USA wants in on this economic prosperity. They also want money off of this. That's why Nord Stream 2 was shut down, because now all of a sudden, especially under President Trump, they're saying, okay, well, buy our gas, buy our oil. We'll get it to you for fairly cheap and we'll make an alliance with you. Western Europe and the West wants those pipelines to secure gas and oil for Western Europe. It has nothing to do with the Ukrainian people, by the way. It has everything to do with Western Europe wanting the security of those pipelines. So they want to be in. They want to have Ukraine join the Western alliances to ensure that that is the West, controls the pipelines. Russia saw this. Russia had foresight. Putin went in. And he's going to ensure that nobody takes those pipelines. Nobody controls the pipelines but them. That's what happened with Crimea, by the way. Crimea, trillions of cubic meters of gas underneath the ocean there, underneath the water. We saw 2014, the West wanted it. Russia came in and just basically took it back. Foresight. Do you not think the USA would have done the same thing? Do you not think the Western countries would have done the same thing? Of course they would have. Protecting their own interest. This is natural. I'm sorry, but that's how the world works. It has nothing to do with the Ukrainian people. It has everything to do with politics and economics. Biolabs. There are many biolabs in the Ukraine, not Russian biolabs. I can only imagine what's being built or being manufactured there. Those biolabs are Western biolabs. Russia's not having it. Why? Again, they feel threatened. They feel aggression. They feel that they could be used against Russia at any time. So we have that point as well. We also have the way the Ukraine has been handling the situation with ethnic minorities in the Ukraine. So I already talked about Crimea. We also have the other two provinces or territories that declared independence. We have Donetsk and Luhansk. They declared and they wanted independence from the Ukraine. Why? Because there are ethnic Russians living there. They speak Russian. It's Russian majority territory. Don't forget, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk, there are many people, these were many former USSR military bases. All these people had allegiance to the Red Army. They're all Russians. All of them. They wanted independence. They declared independence 2014. Fighting went on. Russia helped them to fight off the Ukrainians and fight the Ukrainians. Minsk won. They had a peace agreement, or they had an agreement. That didn't work. They kept fighting. Minsk 2 in 2015 kind of sort of worked, not really. And now we're back to 2022. Russia comes in, helping those territories become independent, declaring them independent states, and helping them remain independent. The Ukraine has not had the greatest record of looking after its ethnic minorities. I'm Hungarian by descent. There's a Hungarian minority. After the Second World War, a territory was annexed to the Ukraine in Western Ukraine from Hungary, with Hungarian majority speaking ethnic minority within the Ukraine. So there's an ethnic minority of Hungarians in the Ukraine. The Ukraine passed laws that ethnic minorities cannot speak or be served or helped in their own native language, and they do everything to suppress these ethnic minorities from practicing their language, using their language, and their practicing their culture and heritage. This is true. They do it physically, they do it economically, they threaten, they keep them in fear. I know this, I've seen it, I've heard it, we talk about it. This is absolutely true. Unfortunately, the Ukrainians are not angels. They are not innocent. It's not that Russia is bad, Vladimir Putin is bad and a dictator. Ukraine is innocent and is good and is angelic, and they've dropped from the heaven and they have nothing under their fingers. They do. And this is one of them. The treatment of these people, unfortunately, is not the greatest. And finally, and the final point, but I'm not sure if the most important, but one that needs to be talked about, is the Ukraine is a country that's an interesting country. Ever since 91, they declared its independence from Russia and from the USSR. So its economy is kind of interesting. It has lots of resources, but its economy stinks. Let's be honest. One of the reasons is because its economy is, a lot of it, based on money laundering. There's a lot of mafia activity within the Ukraine. Lots of money laundering and lots of other dirty things that I'd rather not talk about. But it's not just the Ukrainian politics or politicians. The Ukrainian people have suffered greatly because of the politics of those politicians and other politicians from the West. Obama, Clinton, Biden. We know some of Hunter Biden's scandals. We know some of his doings. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Slovakia is very similar. A lot of mafia, a lot of money laundering, and Ukraine is a money laundering industry. That's what it is, with a lot of other disgusting, despicable lawlessness and illegal activity. And don't forget, Trudeau's in on it, and we also have to look very deeply at Freeland. Freeland's grandfather, Ukrainian. Freeland knows Ukrainian fluently. She speaks it fluently. Freeland's grandfather was an editor for a Nazi paper in Poland and in Ukraine during the Second World War. This is true. Fact, you can look at it. She is not allowed to enter Russia because of her past activities during the Soviet era. She's not allowed to enter Russia still because of her activities post-communist Russia. There are things there that are quite intriguing. A lot of stuff that not everybody knows, and a lot of stuff that we just have maybe an inkling of, but it goes deeper. And a lot of these Western leaders have a lot of dirt. A lot of it goes to the Ukraine. A lot of it leads to the Ukraine and through the Ukraine. Apparently there were pictures and sightings of Ukrainian military forces, army personnel, burning lots and lots of papers and documents. Don't know what it is. You can speculate. I'm just saying it's interesting. It's also interesting to note that Vladimir Putin and the Russian forces are not occupying. They're not staying. They're not stopping. They keep moving. They're just advancing and moving in on Kiev, the capital. They've set up shop in Chernobyl, which is not too far. It's about 50 kilometers from Kiev as a base. They're moving in. That's where ground zero for a lot of these politicians is. These are interesting times. We think that Putin is our enemy. I digress. I dare to say differently. Don't get me wrong. He has a complex. He's authoritarian. War is not the answer. A lot of people suffer. But at the same time, he has put a wrench in the works of Soros and Schwab right at this moment. The Western leaders are afraid. They are scared. All of a sudden, Ukraine means something. All of a sudden, the Ukrainian people are the center of the universe. All of a sudden, everybody is for Ukraine and with Ukraine. Every Western leader, from Biden to Macron, all of them. Think about it. Think about why. Think of the timing of this invasion. Think of the timing. Putin is calculating. Putin knows a lot. Putin is anti-WEF. Putin is not globalist. At this moment, I truly believe he's doing us a favor. He's buying us time. I really think so. There are a lot of things that we don't know that are, I'm just scratching the surface. But thinking about it over the last day and a half, couple of days, this is my reasoning. He's not our enemy at this point. Do we have to be careful with him? Oh yes. Do we have to not tick him off? Please don't. He's got probably the most powerful military on this planet. And if Trudeau doesn't watch his step, we're Putin within a day, he's taken over. And nobody is going to go up against the Soviet or Russia. Nobody is. They're too powerful and too scary, and they will not back down. Trust me, they won't. But at this moment, on this day, at this time, he's doing something that probably will help us. These are my thoughts. I just want you to think about it. Think it through, and trust me, I believe I'm on the right track. Please share, please think, please leave a comment. We'll talk to you later.